Dan from Roy.
Hey, so I have some serious concerns, and these national issues are really important. But we have local problems also. With the Biden administration's executive order to mandate a vaccine or be tested. I would honestly love to see us pass a bill that makes it to where I'm able to risk assess for me and my family. I am right now already looking, so I work for a local technology company that was bought out by a larger company. I can already see the writing on the wall where they're incentivizing me if I'm in good standing in February that I get a bonus, but clearly they're going to tell me that I have to get a vaccine even though I've already had COVID. I have natural immunity, but now I have to undergo a medical procedure. I see this as a large problem. I would like to see our local leadership intervene here. This is clearly a violation of my medical rights.
Thanks, Dan. And I hope you've seen from the governor to the state legislature, and so let's talk locally, fully supportive of their pushback on this. President Biden just flat out missed the mark, right? This is one that I'm just sitting here looking at and like, this is not how you win American support. You win American support from clear data, clear communication, and all this is going to do is put companies in a really horrible spot. It's unconstitutional, and I'm with our local leaders in opposition to this. So if there's ever any question, I believe I've vaccinated. My wife and I are vaccinated. I believe it's safe and effective. I think we missed the mark by not being able to communicate what we could be expecting with this. And that's the part. I've talked to business leaders, and they're in a spot where they're like, well, people are going to leave our firm. It's hard enough to hire people right now as it is. Like there's bewilderment and frustration across the board, and from people that have embraced the vaccine and are very supportive of it. And I'm there too, but I'm not supportive of this measure that President Biden has done. So our state legislature is pushing hard against it. Let me take it out of context real quick. And I follow this closely because it's kind of right relevant to my world right now, but this is a great time to share with folks, to you all, where our Supreme Court is stepping in, right? It was unconstitutional. It was against the administration's ability for the moratorium that they extended past July 31st. And the Supreme Court stepped in and said, no, we've ruled on this. It's not the case. There will be a lawsuit for some of the executive action that Biden has taken from early on. I'm a big proponent of Congress figuring this stuff out, and whether it's Republican or Democrat in the White House, I'm sick and tired of ruling by executive fiat, right? And so we're seeing the Supreme Court step in on many different things, and that should give us all some hope. So again, local leaders, I think they've been strong against this, and this will, seeing this rule of 100 people and an employee, 100-person employer mandating this, we're going to continue to fight against this, and whether it needs to be a law or legislation or just firm opposition, we'll continue to push there. So okay, so we have the poll results, and what do we have here? All right. Just for everybody to be aware, and we use this, we definitely take this to heart. 38% immigration of what we need to be focused on, 14% inflation, 13% Medicare, 10% infrastructure, 7% pro-life values, and then others. So that's some clear data. So I really appreciate that, and we take it to heart. Okay, so again, *3 for questions, *6 for newsletter sign up. Zach from Park City.
Hey, Blake.
Hi, Zach.
So I think my biggest worry is you have so much bureaucratic overreach and so much executive overreach. Where can you get bipartisan support to kind of pull that power back to the Congress?
Great, I love it. And you're speaking my language, Zach. The trouble right now, so I got a couple visions for this, aspirations for this. The trouble right now is when you have one party that has majority in both the House and the Senate and the White House, even though the margins are like razor thin, like 4 seats in the House, 50-50 Senate, you'd think that we would kind of come together, and there are many of us that try on multiple issues. I'm not gonna give up my voter card on things when I'm not gonna support bipartisanship just for bipartisanship. I want to make sure that I'm firm in my voting, and I believe anyway. So there's the two things, right? That is, and this has turned into a very opportunistic time for the majority party. So Democrats are looking at these 2 years as we're going to go and push for every single thing that we've wanted. That's what happened in the first COVID relief bill, the $1.9 trillion COVID relief bill. That was not related to COVID. There was a lot of excess spending that was priorities that there had been wanting to do for a while. Look, when the Republicans had I'll call it the trifecta, if you will, White House, House, and Senate, we got things through on a partisan basis that you could look at. I support that policy, but it's when there's a party that has that type of control. So what we're seeing right now is very narrow margins, but almost a difficulty to work together. You have seen some very brave Democrats step up in the last few months and oppose and push back and try. We'll see to the extent that they're going to be successful on some of this spending. But, that's why I was passionate about, for these questions right here, Zach, that I was willing to join the Problem Solvers Caucus. And that is a caucus of 29 Republicans and 29 Democrats that meet regularly, that create a relationship, that we can find ways to work together. I have passed lots of different pieces of bipartisan legislation. I will point again to the National Defense Authorization Act. Your Congress still very much supports our military men and women. That was a neat thing tonight to see it pass with such bipartisanship. And by the time that it actually gets done and goes through the whole process in conference, you'll see it even more. It's a good bill. So there are lots of things that are going on. The big things, the big ticket items, you're going to see the Democrats continue to try for lots of spending, and you're going to see Republicans, really focused on what our policies will be so we can get the America's trust to retake the majority and implement. I'm excited to be a part of a task force. There's 7 of them on various topics, from jobs and economy to China. I'm on the climate, conservation, and energy task force. My role on natural resources gives me some unique insight there. And you're going to see from those task force, look for them down the road, probably by next summer, you'll be able to see, what our position is on a lot of these types of policies. So look for that. Know that there's plenty of collaborative nature going on. We've passed several bipartisan bills just in my short time here, but we need to get more balanced government and move to it. So, okay. Now again, Star 3 questions, Star 6 newsletter. We're going to go to D in Camas.
Hello, Cass went dead. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
D. Yes, sir.
Hello?
We got you.
Oh, that's
We got you.
my pet peeve is for years and years and years we keep getting farther and farther in debt. I never ever hear anybody that we're making any advances to figure out how to get debt. It's the United States is so far in debt. No one seems to be doing anything about it year after year. What about balancing the budget? That should be the most important thing in the whole world right now, is solve a lot of problems. That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee. Instead of just highlighting the problems, you've already done it. It doesn't just seem like we keep getting more and more debt. Sir, we are getting more and more in debt. Our debt to GDP ratio is what we need to be looking at here. And the things that we need to do is reform the way we approach the debt ceiling and all that type of nonsense to debt to GDP targets so we can actually monitor how we can go about reversing this trend. Getting to a balanced budget is a going to be a tall task with how much interest we've piled up over the last 2 decades. But here's what I am doing at the local level. We've got a team of 7 really interested people, experts in this. We're forming a debt and deficit task force, and I was inspired by this by the folks back in 1997 that did this type of work. They chipped away at it. Members of the Republican legislature and President H.W. Bush, 41, and President Clinton. This was a priority for them. And in the late 90s, we actually did achieve a balanced budget. We're not always going to have a balanced budget. There's going to be times for investment in certain things, but we need to show the American people that we can get back on track. So it's something that I am just amazed, and even more so amazed. There is numerous different committees that actually address the budget, and when you don't have people talking to each other and groups that are doing this, and there's opportunity to do a continuing resolution where you don't zero out your budget. Like, there are so many flawed ways that our government approaches this, and you'll see it right now with the debt limit talk, that it's not effective on how we go about addressing this. So I get hope by the fact that it was within my lifetime, many of our lifetimes back in the late 90s, that we did achieve a surplus. But since the early 2000s, from Republicans and Democrats, we have not seen this trajectory go down, and the American people and the trust in our in our markets and the confidence in our U.S. dollar, we need to be able to show that our debt to GDP ratio does not continually skyrocket. And I'm looking forward to this. We're doing it in October with a group of people, and I'm going to have them constantly engaged and advising. And I want to get to a point where annually we're making recommendations. We need to look at everything here. Now, my whole plan on debt and deficit, you look at it, and it's 1, you got to grow the economy. 2, you have to address entitlement reform. 3, you have to dig into and be willing to look at discretionary spending, find ways that we can save. But discretionary spending grows at a much lower rate than mandatory spending, and so entitlement reform is a key piece. And the 4th thing is then you look at revenues. Now, what the Democrats are doing right now is they're going to increase spending and also try to increase taxes, and that's just not a productive way to go about doing it. I look at what Republicans did in 2017. While they did add to the deficit, and that's a problem, there was tax cuts that helped grow the economy. That will actually raise revenues. But again, that fits into my four-tiered push on debt and deficit matters. Again, grow the economy, address entitlement reform, address discretionary spending, find savings, go into it, and then look at revenues and see where you need to kind of make up for it. But that's after you have a strength of what you're doing. We have to be able to have a strong economy in order to ever get to the point where we can overcome our deficits. But yeah, we're $30 trillion in debt. You see many people embracing modern monetary theory, and that's the concept that we can just print money, and those checks are going to come due. And there's a big concern, and I hope to be a part of a reversal of debt culture. I talked about it a lot on the campaign. I don't have influence on this to be able to, wave my wand yet, but what I can do at the local level is get involved and do something, and that's what we're going to do with this task force. So thank you, and thanks for being concerned about it. Let's go to Jamie in Ogden.
Hey, Blake. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So, Blake, my husband's over in Afghanistan 5.5 years as a military contractor. And so when I saw that we pulled out in the dead of the night, didn't even tell our Afghan partners, I assumed that we had all of our military contractors out and any American out that should have been out when I saw that on the news. So I was disgusted when I found out that wasn't the case. And that just needs to be talked about a whole lot more, of how we just abandoned our military contractors and other Americans there when we did that pullout. And so it wasn't just an oops. That was an intentional pullout of all of our military ahead of everyone else. And I know it gets talked about a little bit, but not nearly enough. Because that could have been my husband, and we have military contractors that are over there.
Jamie, thank you, and I recognize your voice. You are engaged, concerned citizen. Thank you. Jamie, that's why we were the first bill that went in on Afghanistan accountability. I was so proud of our team. While they were up all night trying to process those Americans that are there and those contractors and those folks that were supportive of us for all those years, we were able to put in actual legislation that the legislation itself was never going to pass on its own. It was going to get added to areas of jurisdiction, and we just got the first piece through tonight on the National Defense Authorization Act. So there were parts of it as I watched what was going on, and I saw the Washington Post and the New York Times and typical left-leaning media calling out President Biden, and then you saw a dip in job approval ratings by double digits. Americans were grasping it, and we cannot keep this surface level. I think the major problem of what you're talking about is why the State Department was running a lot of the shots, calling a lot of the shots. It was a pipe dream to think. I think the intelligence will ultimately bear out that it was a pipe dream to think that we could keep a embassy there with a troop pullout and wanting an over-the-horizon intelligence operation. Like, that was all. This is what I'm talking about with you don't have that strategic plan. And this is where I get a little bit like my old consulting days. Building a strategic plan for an organization, you have to look at what your end objective is. No one talks about this better than H.R. McMaster, former NSA. He was just a guru on this, and he talks about not having the objective in place. We had a timeline in place, but we didn't have what our objective was. And with that, we lost Bagram Air Force. We gave up Bagram Air Force Base. We made so many blunders in this particular thing. This wasn't about a withdrawal being a yes or no. This was about how we went about doing it. And so I share your frustration where we put the first piece of legislation in against this. This is an area that I obviously personally am very involved in some of my previous background. And we're gonna be able to get a real strong response to this once this Defense Authorization Act passes and look into this. This was a huge football. I mean, it's a foreign policy mess right now in our country. The French ambassador just left. They had to pull the French ambassador. We had a deal with Australia that I'm ultimately, as I look into it, supportive of this deal. But the fact that we would allow our relationship with France to just deteriorate overnight based off of some revenue, we could have worked out a deal with them. There is no strategy with Biden's foreign policy, and that's an area that is near and dear to me, and I want to, and I'm partial to watching it. It is a complete mess right now, and we've got to get our standing back with our foreign allies. Okay, we're gonna do another poll. Here's the question: how concerned are you about our growing national debt crisis and the Biden administration's federal spending plan? Concerned, indifferent, unconcerned, or unsure. So 1 for concerned, 2 for indifferent, 3 for unconcerned, 4 for unsure. Again, concerned, indifferent, unconcerned, unsure. Okay, star 3 for question, star 6 for newsletter, and Travis from Hubbard. Travis, are you on?
Good evening, Representative. Thank you for your time tonight.
Absolutely.
Hey, we've talked a lot about national and global issues, which are absolutely important, but I want to talk a little bit about home for a minute. The census came out this year. We've seen just unprecedented growth in our state. A lot of people moving here. We continue to have a lot of kids. I'm not hearing a lot out of the Utah delegation, which you obviously can only speak for yourself, but I'm curious what you're wanting to do and what you're trying to do to protect resources like water, farmland. Water's getting shut off early. Farmland is drying up as well. Crops aren't being produced. And the thoughts and prayers just don't seem to be helping. So I'm curious what you feel should be done on a national and a local basis to help preserve these resources from flowing downstream into other states and countries.
Our legislative director, who leads our entire legislative team, has been working on these issues for years. We are on the Natural Resources Committee. prioritizing ag needs to be addressed. I just met with Western Ag Credit. It's an awesome organization. They are a co-op that helps farmers. Our farmers do so much for our ag workers, do so much for our community, and there needs to be we need to reciprocate this. So we need more rain. We absolutely need more rain. The reason why our snowpack didn't really affect or didn't roll off into our reservoirs enough was because our groundwater, there was so much seepage. We didn't have the rain for leading up to it. And so, this isn't the worst it's ever been, but this is a big problem. So we are fully aware. We had something with declaring a certain emergency given our drought situation right now, that we're pushing hard to be able to get a different set of funding that we deserve for this. We held a roundtable on fire sheds. I had natural resources. The ranking member on natural resources actually come out to Utah and go and visit everywhere from wildfires to see our drought and across the board. So this is something we're engaged with. I can't speak to every single thing, but there's a majority of our bills and our time spent on natural resources doing forums, particularly for this. It is fully aware. I can tell you that our governor is very involved. Our state legislature is working closely with me on some legislation for the Great Salt Lake. We just dropped that bill today for the Saline Lake solution. We've gotten good bipartisan support across the western states about this. Our population's lower out in the west, and sometimes we have to fight really hard to convince those heavily populated eastern states when Congress works together in that regard. But the thing that I'm most excited about is our Fire Sheds Act, because it allows for shared stewardship. Shared stewardship is a way for our local government to interact with federal agencies, and it slashes red tape and bureaucracy that gives us the opportunity to work together and be more productive. And we have at least a good system here, and so a lot of those immediate issues, and we have to be willing to look at immediate issues plus long-term issues, and being willing to jump into the climate challenge conversation. And I have not dug my head in the sand. I'm working with industry on how to go about with that broader perspective, but there is more acute issues we have to deal with. We're doing a lot on natural resources. Okay, star 3 for questions, star 6 to sign up for newsletter. We're going to go to Amy. We're going to go to Amy from North Ogden. My team wanted me to do another poll. I would rather hear what Amy has to ask.
Thanks.
We have a good time with my team, so.
Thanks. I just wanted to ask you, what is your push to pull our country together instead of being each side being against the other? Like the Democrats blame the Republicans blame the Democrats, and we all got ourselves in this situation. The war and everything, it wasn't just one side. We're all struggling. So my question is, what is your goal in pulling our country together? We need both sides to work together to make our country work. We need both sides. It's never good to have one side run everything. It's better 100%. To have a balance. At least that's how a good government works.
Amy,
so I
thank
just
you.
was wondering what your thoughts are.
No, and I've heard that same question, even from from way back in campaigns. That's what gave me so much enthusiasm to join the Problem Solvers Caucus. Those, where we meet frequently. There's 2 angles to it. We have to come together on policy issues. We have to come together on a more relationship-based side of things. And so there's lots of organizations like No Labels and Common Sense American, and that are encouraging and pushing there. You saw some of this with some of the legislation coming together. Even with infrastructure, right? But I'll point to this. I'll point to the debt. You are 100% right. No one has the moral authority to be able to say, this wasn't part of our problem. This was a Republican and a Democrat issue. The last time we actually, made real progress on our deficit issues was when there was real bipartisanship. So I am part of a group called 30 for 30. And it's not the ESPN videos. Those are awesome. But it's a group called 30 for 30 that's led by there's very conservative members, there's very liberal folks, and we kind of come together on what we want to do with things related to the debt. And I'll just give you one quick example. Again, I talked about it earlier, the debt limit. Like this debt limit it's like when the Republicans are in charge, they'll pass it. When the Democrats are in charge, they'll pass it, and everybody blames each other for, the problems. We need to fix that so it's debt to GDP targets. And I've been told from veterans back here, oh, good luck, Blake. I know you're a young, idealistic member of Congress. We've wanted something like that for a while. I'm not going to give up on that yet. If I'm willing to just give in to the status quo, maybe it's time for a change. Like I want to see something change, reform in that debt conversation. We actually make changes and use this time. I don't see it happening now. This go around for I won't get into the reasons, but we can make reform and find ways to work there. I have great relationships with members on the other side of the aisle, and I value those. And there is often meetings that we do several times a month to make sure that we talk about issues, clarify issues, and I've seen it play out like, oh, I would have never seen that perspective. Okay, I understand why your party's doing that, and we're building some relationship there, and that's good. It's not going to just solve overnight, but we're hyper-partisan. Our media pushes us that way. I can tell you that as I've watched left-leaning and right-leaning media, things get distorted so easily, and so that's another area that I don't necessarily have control over that. I can just try to communicate what I'm experiencing, what I'm seeing. But I love the push. I appreciate it, and thank you. So obviously, highly concerned with the spending. We assume that very, very highly concerned. So we are going to wrap up. That concludes the town hall tonight. Thank you so much for joining. Please, before you take off, press *6 to subscribe to our newsletter. Our website, blakemore.house.gov. Check in. We're going to be doing some more town halls. And I've never worked harder at anything in my life. I have the world's best team. They are here with me. It's 10 o'clock at night. I am now going to go to baseball practice because we got to win next week. And when the baseball game is, it's 10 o'clock at night. I got to go make sure I get a little batting practice in. We have a really engaged team both at the district in Ogden and back here in DC that they love their jobs as much as I do, and we want to continue to find opportunities to serve. So thank you all so much, and we'll call, email in. We'll do our best to get back to you on any concerns you have. Try to do these periodically. So thank you all. Appreciate it.